The klaxon was a serrated blade, carving through the silence of the cockpit to find the raw nerve of Jack Morrison's focus. Red light, the color of a dying star or a fresh wound, saturated the cabin. His fingers danced across the console, a frantic percussion against the dying heartbeat of the Hoshi-Maji. The AI spoke with the chilling, clinical indifference of a funeral director. Primary drive is a corpse, secondary systems are bleeding out. Gravity is a greedy creditor, Jack. We are falling. Through the reinforced transparent steel, the world of Xylos-IV loomed, a bruised tapestry of violent purples and suffocating blues. He hadn't planned to touch this uncharted dirt, but the physics of a failing engine are the only laws that matter. He wrestled the yoke, muscles screaming against the inertial dampeners, a king of nothing fighting for a throne of scrap. The ship hit the atmosphere like a hammer hitting an anvil. The Hoshi-Maji wasn't flying. It was a screaming bullet of friction and failing ceramic tiles. Temperature readings climbed into the red, a fever that threatened to melt the very cage holding his soul. Jake saw a scar in the emerald dark canopy below, a clearing or a grave. He hauled back, yanking the dying beast toward that narrow window of survival. The ground surged up, a wall of indifferent stone and predatory earth. Brace, the computer whispered, a lover's lie at the end of the world. Then the scream of metal on soil, a violent baptism of mud and fire, as the ship plowed a furrow into the alien dirt and finally shuddered into a hissing, broken silence. Consciousness returned as a dull throb in the base of his stack. When the dust settled, Jake stared through the cracked viewport at a forest that shouldn't exist. The Vora-Kyn didn't just grow, it pulsed, a bioluminescent cancer of blue and green light that rippled in response to the wreckage of his landing. The computer chimed, its voice now a low, flickering ghost. Atmosphere is breathable, if you don't mind the taste of alien spores. Biological threats are high. Suit up, Jack. The meat is vulnerable. He didn't argue. He sealed the environment suit, the magnetic seals clicking with a finality that felt like a coffin lid, and stepped out into the neon dark. The ground was a sensory assault. Every footfall sent a ripple of purple radiance through the moss, a digital echo in a biological system. His boots felt heavy, the gravity of Xylos a constant reminder of his physical debt. He raised his scanner, its light a pale, pathetic thing against the shifting brilliance of the Vora-Kyn. Something moved in the shadows, a silhouette too graceful for a beast, too sharp for a dream. He reached for the blaster at his hip, the cold grip of the steel a familiar comfort. "Speak," he called out, his voice a rasp in the suit's comms. "I'm just a ghost from a fallen star. I seek no war with this ground." The forest went still, the lights dimming like a held breath. She emerged from the luminescence, a titan of twilight skin and predatory grace. She was a statue carved from obsidian and night sky, her features honed to a lethal edge. Vines wreathed her head, moving with a serpentine autonomy that mocked the stillness of the dead. But it was her eyes, twin crucibles of inner fire, that pinned him to the spot. The plants around her flared into an angry, bruised orange. "Your scanner is a lie," her presence seemed to scream. Jake tried a smile, though it felt brittle behind the glass. "You're a vision of a better world," he managed, the cynicism of the spacer momentarily lost in the visceral shock of her. Her response was a gesture of cold command, and the earth itself rose up to claim his legs in a vice of thorny wood. "Easy," Jake grunted, the vines tightening with the crushing intent of a hydraulic press. "Skrull," she spat, the word a melodic venom. "You come to harvest the marrow of this world with your hollow words and iron toys." He struggled, the suit's servos whining in protest. "No harvest here, lady. Just a man with a broken ship and a hungry gut." He moved slowly, reaching for a ration pack with the deliberation of a man defusing a bomb. "Look, this is what we eat. Processed gray, tastes like cardboard and regret. I'm not here for your essence. I'm here because I failed at flying." She drifted closer, the amber light of the Vora-Kyn catching the planes of her face. Her fingers, long and deceptively delicate, snatched the pack from his hand. She studied the plastic seal as if it were an ancient relic. "This is how you sustain the sleeve?" she asked, her voice a low hum. "When there's no real meat to be had?" "Yeah," Jake replied, his heart hammering against his ribs. She circled him, a predator assessing the value of the kill. "You fell hard for a man who claims it was an accident." Jake gestured to the smoldering corpse of the Hoshi-Maji. "Nothing about that was a choice. Gravity doesn't negotiate. I fix my ship, I leave." "Simple trade," Jake said, the vines beginning to slacken their grip. She stood tall, a queen of the grime and the glow. "I am Vaelra," she declared. "You are under the shadow of my blade until your vessel is restored. Scavenge the metal, but touch the spirit of this place, and I will find where your soul is stored and erase it." Jake exhaled, the tension leaving him in a shuddering wave. "I'm Jake, and I promise, the only thing I'm taking from this dirt is my own life, if I can manage it." The vines retreated, slithering back into the loam like secrets kept in the dark. Vaelra remained a pillar of guarded intent, her twilight skin shimmering as the forest settled into a neutral violet. "You are not the Skrull of the archives," she mused, her eyes searching his. Jake brushed the dirt from his suit, a small act of defiance. "I'll take that as a win. Though you're a hell of a welcoming committee for a man who just survived a terminal descent." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, a flicker of light in a dark room. "Repair your iron. I will watch." He turned back to the wreck, feeling her gaze like a physical weight on his spine. The Vora-Kyn pulsed, a silent audience to his labor. The next few hours were a grueling liturgy of grease and desperation. The Hoshi-Maji was a ruin. The port side was a jagged landscape of torn titanium and exposed wiring. He checked the datapad, the scrolling lines of code a mockery of his situation. "Power coupling is severed. Atmospheric regulators are a joke. I'm grounded in paradise, and the bill is coming due." "You talk to the air," Vaelra noted, watching from a throne of mossy stone. The plants seemed to lean toward her, their light synchronizing with the slow rhythm of her breath. "It's better than listening to the silence," Jake grunted, his hands slick with coolant. He stared at a breach in the hull that looked like a jagged tooth. "I need materials. I can't patch this with good intentions." The light turned a wary, predatory amber. "Materials?" she asked. "Metal, ore, something with structural integrity," Jake explained, wiping sweat from his brow. "Unless you want me staying here long enough to become part of the scenery." The plants rippled through colors of deep, bruising blue. Vaelra's brow darkened. "The bones of the world are sacred. We do not let the uninitiated mine the source." "Then we have a problem," Jake said, leaning against the cold hull. But Vaelra shifted, her eyes reflecting the deep dark of the canopy. "There is an alternative. The xenocism of 2 cycles ago brought down another of your iron birds in the frost spines. It is a place of rot, the void scar. Scavenge from the dead, and the living will not complain." Jake's interest peaked, a spark of hope in the gloom. "A wreck? Lead the way. I've always been good at picking through the remains." "You seek much, Ethel Seeker," she said, rising from her throne. "The trek is 3 days through the deep Vora-Kyn. And the night is not empty. The Jakar wake when the light fades, and they do not care for your titles." Jake secured his tools, the weight of the pack a familiar burden. "Darkness and monsters. Sounds like home. Lead on, Vaelra. I've spent my life running from things that hunger." The light shifted, the gentle glow of the afternoon sharpening into the cold, neon edges of a twilight that promised nothing but teeth. A low, vibrating growl echoed from the trees. Jake didn't need a scanner to know the environment had turned hostile. "Shelter first," he said, the pragmatist in him taking the wheel. Vaelra nodded, her eyes cutting through the deepening gloom. "The obsidian sanctum is the only sanctuary. Follow, or be consumed." She moved like liquid, the forest parting for her as if she were the very blood in its veins. Jake scrambled to keep up, his boots clattering against the glowing moss. "My ship," he shouted. "The forest does not eat metal," she called back, her silhouette already fading into the brush. "But the small things will find its heat." Pray they are not hungry. The Vora-Kyn was a different beast in the dark. The plants reached out with sticky, bioluminescent fingers, and the air was thick with the scent of ozone and rot. The Jakar, Jake panted, they feed on energy. Vaelra didn't slow. They feed on the fire in the blood. Your soul burns bright, Jake. To them, you are a beacon of fresh meat. Terrifying, Jake muttered, ducking a branch that felt like a whip. And this sanctum? Is it safe? Vaelra looked back, her eyes twin embers in the dark. It is protected by the ancestors. But bringing a stranger to the heart of our history is a gamble. Do not make me regret it. They climbed higher, the air thinning as the forest gave way to black stone. The obsidian sanctum loomed, a mouth in the mountain, wreathed in blue moss that pulsed like a slow, steady heartbeat. Don't touch the walls, she warned. The stories here are etched in energy. They do not like to be disturbed. Jake stepped into the cool dark of the cave, his scanner silent for once. The walls were covered in intricate, glowing glyphs, a history written in light. The prime ascension, Vaelra whispered, her voice echoing in the stone. Jake reached out, his fingers stopping inches from a symbol that felt like it was vibrating. This isn't just art. It's code. It is the record of our transformation, she said, her hand catching his wrist. Her skin was hot, a sharp contrast to the cave's chill. Before the ascension, we were weak. Then the outsiders came. They didn't see a world. They saw a laboratory. Jake felt the weight of her words. The bioengineering of Xylos wasn't a miracle. It was a scar. They changed you, he said softly. Made you faster, stronger, more connected to the glow. Vaelra released him, her eyes fixed on the glyphs. They made us into weapons, and then they were surprised when we fought back. I'm not them, Jake said, his voice steady in the dark. I'm an ethel seeker. I'm here to understand, not to conquer. She scoffed, but the hostility had been replaced by a weary curiosity. You all say you want to learn, but learning is just the first step of taking. He pulled out his scanner, the screen a soft blue in the gloom. Look at the energy patterns. Your world isn't just a place, it's a network. The plants, the people, the light, it's all one system. It's beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way. Vaelra leaned in, her hair brushing his shoulder. She smelled of earth and something ancient. And you truly seek nothing else? I seek to get my ship off the ground, he said, meeting her gaze. And maybe a meal that doesn't come out of a tube. A startled laugh escaped her, a sound that seemed to brighten the cave moss. You are an anomaly, Jake. You face death with a joke. It's either that or scream, he shrugged. Vaelra stepped back, her glow softening to a peaceful lavender. Rest now. I must speak to the Zenith-Kin. They will sense you soon, and they are not as patient as I am. She vanished into the dark, leaving Jake alone with the pulsing walls. He lay down, the stone beneath him surprisingly warm. The moss shifted to a teasing pink, as if the cave itself were laughing at him. Great, he muttered. Now even the rocks think I'm a joke. He was studying a glyph when she returned, carrying fruit that glowed like embers. Eat, she commanded. Your ration packs are an insult to the palate. Jake took a bite of a purple fruit, and the world seemed to sharpen. Liquid starlight, he murmured. If this is what the world tastes like, I might never leave. Vaelra sat opposite him, the light of the fruit reflecting in her eyes. You speak of leaving, yet you look at this world like a man who has finally found his home. Jake paused, the sweetness of the fruit a sharp contrast to the metallic tang of his usual life. Maybe I'm just tired of the chrome and the grime. This place, it has a soul. A soul that was almost destroyed by your kind, she reminded him. The cave flared red, reflecting her sudden spike of emotion. They thought they could improve upon perfection. They didn't see the cost. Jake reached out, his hand covering hers. The cost was too high. I see that now. The air between them grew heavy, charged with a different kind of energy. What are you seeking, Jake? She asked, her voice a whisper. In the stars, in the dirt. What is the goal? He looked at her, the blue glow of her skin mesmerizing. I think I'm just looking for something real. Something that isn't a simulation or a trade. She leaned in, her eyes burning with an intensity that made his breath hitch. You are dangerous, Ethel Seeker. You make me think of things that shouldn't exist. Impossible things. Jake smiled, his hand tracing the line of her jaw. Impossible is just a word people use when they're afraid to try. Her kiss was a shock of pure energy, a collision of two different worlds. The cave erupted in a symphony of light, the moss flaring through every color of the spectrum. When they broke apart, Jake felt like he'd been plugged into a star. Definitely impossible, he gasped. Completely, she agreed, her glow brighter than he'd ever seen it. But perhaps the ancestors will forgive us this once. Jake laughed, pulling her back. Let's conduct some more research. For science. The following days were a blur of labor and light. Jake worked on the ship, his hands moving with a new precision as he adapted to the planet's energy. Vaelra was always there, a shadow of grace and fire. But then the fever hit. The spores of Xylos were finally claiming their toll. He fell into a delirium of neon dreams. He saw the history of the Nara-Kin, the violent birth of their power, and the long silence that followed. He felt Vaelra's hand in his, a steady anchor in a sea of shifting light. Don't let go, he whispered into the dark. When he woke, his skin was etched with faint, glowing lines, the mark of the transformation. You are part of the world now, Vaelra said, her voice thick with relief. The spores didn't kill you, they adapted you. You are bound to Xylos, Jake. Forever. Jake examined his arm, the bioluminescent patterns pulsing with his heartbeat. Guess I won't need a flashlight anymore, he joked, though his eyes were serious. I'm not leaving, am I? Vaelra shook her head. You can't. But why would you want to? The Zenithkin were not pleased. They saw Jake as a corruption of their sacred ground. But Vaelra stood between them, her blade a warning to any who would touch him. He is one of us now, she declared. The world has claimed him. Jake stepped forward, his new energy flaring in response to the tension. I'm not a threat, he said to the elders. I'm a bridge. You've been hiding from the stars for too long. It's time to see what's out there. He used his ship's systems to project a map of the galaxy into the air, the holographic stars mingling with the bioluminescence of the forest. The universe is vast, and you have a gift that could change everything. Don't waste it in the shadows. Arkan Kora watched the stars with wide, wonder-filled eyes. You suggest we leave our home? After all we've endured? Jake looked at Vaelra, her hand finding his. I suggest you stop being afraid. You've conquered the grave of your past. Now, conquer the future. The transformation of the Vora-Kyn was complete. The forest began to pulse with a new rhythm, a harmony that included the metallic heart of the Hoshi-Maji. The ship itself began to glow, the hull adapting to the planet's energy. She's ready, Jake said, looking at the repaired vessel. Vaelra stood beside him, her silhouette a pillar of strength. Where will we go? She asked. Jake smiled, pulling her close. Everywhere. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you stop trying to perfect nature and start living in it. The takeoff was a celebration of light. The Hoshi-Maji rose from the dirt, a streak of bioluminescent fire against the velvet dark of the sky. As they broke orbit, Jake looked back at the blue and purple world below. Goodbye, Xylos, he whispered. And thank you for the crash. Beside him, Vaelra took the co-pilot's seat, her eyes fixed on the stars. The stars are cold, she noted. Jake reached over, his hand interweaving with hers, their shared energy a warm, pulsing light in the cockpit. Not anymore, he said. With us, they're going to burn brighter than ever. The galaxy was a vast, unforgiving place, filled with chrome and grime and the echoes of old wars. But as the Hoshi-Maji jumped into warp, its bioluminescent hull a beacon in the void, it was clear that the rules had changed. An anomaly had arrived, and the future would never be the same. They were a tragedy of kings no longer, but a new myth in the making. A man of meat and machine, a woman of light and fire, and a ship that carried the soul of a planet into the dark. The descent was over, and the stars were finally listening.